History. In 1963, when Attorney General Kennedy and Senator Javitis said there might be a Negro president in the next 30 or 40 years, fact, most outspoken of the big magazines replied there was already one. In February of 1964 issue had an article, America's First Negro President. It named Warren G. Harding as the one and had affidavits from elderly whites who knew the Harding family. But before Harding, 3 other presidents had been loudly proclaimed by white people as being of Negro ancestry. Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, and Abraham Lincoln. Who taught you to hate yourself? People like this, who were black but played the white game. The portraits of none of the above mentioned show the slightest degree of Negro strain, but that is certainly not proof. Even before the Revolution, many of Negro ancestry had become so white that whites who had been kidnapped and sold as Negroes could not prove they were really white. The more so that some of them were darker than the bleached Negroes. Children were especially victims. As late as 1858, white orphan asylums sold their children at public auctions, and a picture of the Times show a white girl being tanned to sell into slavery in the South. Harper's Weekly, January 30th, 1864, has pictures of emancipated white slaves. The most famous case of the times was that of Salome Muller, a white German girl who was sold as a Negro slave. Her relatives brought suit, but the Supreme Court of Louisiana held she was a Negro. It wasn't until her birth certificate was dug up in Germany that the real race was discovered. In fact, Salome, who had been married to a Negro, believed herself to be one also. What writers of the time said of this is given in my book, and this is J.A. Rogers, Sex and Race, Volume 2, in the chapter, White People Sold as Negroes. And you want to know why black people are confused, don't know their history? If it can happen to white people, and it did happen to black people, just imagine. But now I want to give you the pedigree of the slave master.
Don't you dare do that. I'm so sick of African Americans being called violent when the world's worst violence was done to them, not by them, to them, not by them. They attack black people after they've been murdered, when they did absolutely nothing wrong. You're pushing us to the limit. And what do I mean by that? You're asking us to talk about history, the history of the South. This is in Georgia. What happened in Georgia? There were savages in Georgia. It was the ancestors of the white right-wingers. They were absolute savages. They murdered people. They lynched people. They raped people. They enslaved people. They took babies from their mothers and sold them as property. You want to talk about savages? Your ancestors were the biggest savages the world has ever seen. And so don't you dare call a black man a savage after you murdered him. Don't you dare do that. I'm so sick of African Americans being called violent when the world's worst violence was done to them, not by them, to them, not by.
And you want to return us back into a period where you can get your savagery nature back and what we're supposed to do. Sit down, eat popcorn, and watch TV. Sometimes you don't have a choice. You elected him, now he's your problem.